Vivian. Teachers report students using the iPad to watch YouTube instead of doing work during class. Oh my goodness, have you been on some of my sessions? Made token boards for them to earn use of the iPad during the break, and for students school related before the break if they have free time before the break. Any other ideas? Staff unable to monitor them. So wanted self-monitoring to use token boards. Yeah, Vivian, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. I even see my own daughter. My own daughter doesn't have a diagnosis. She's 9. When she was online learning, she was at the dining room table with me and she looked engaged and what have you. And I would go over there and I would see 4 screens open, and all of a sudden she'd shut one down really quickly. I know exactly what she was doing. She was looking up LOL things and whatever she could do to quietly that wasn't teacher learning. It happens. It absolutely happens. It probably happens with us a little. I'm hoping that sometimes. I was just gonna say, I'm hoping that none of you guys are like doing something else right now, but you could be. So it does happen. I get it. I think a self-monitoring system is awesome. The difficulty with a self-monitoring system is usually you're in person to do it first. Why don't we take a step back and explain self-monitoring systems, and then we can catch it up to this. Do you want to do that, Shira?
Yeah, sure. So self-monitoring, the definition of self-monitoring, what we're referring to is we're creating a system where the student or the client or the individual is able to monitor their own behavior and then provide some sort of reinforcement based on the behavior that they've been monitoring. So it's really great. If you think of any one of us, trying to quit smoking or lose weight or exercise more, we'd have more success with that if we could put a system in place where we can monitor our own behavior and provide reinforcement contingent on that. So it is something very practical and realistic, and if we could do it with our students, and a lot of them would be more successful, and it would help kind of create more internal motivation. So a student couldn't start out with a self-monitoring system. They have to kind of have that basic concept of reinforcement, right? I do something, I get something, understanding of behavior-specific reward. So I need to meet XYZ criteria, and then I can, trade that in for some sort of points. So if they have that kind of basic understanding where you define the behavior, you define the expectation, usually for me, it's at the point where they can understand the behavior contract. If you can have a behavior contract where they can kind of reflect, right? You can say, I expect for, this English period for you to raise your hand if you have a question, ask for help when you need it, and stay in your seat, or whatever it is. These are the expectations. Then the student is able to kind of think about their own behavior and say, did I meet these expectations? There has to be kind of that ability to abstractly think about their own behavior. There are other ways to do it more in the moment, but it does require a little bit more support. So let's take this example where they're able to reflect on their own behavior. The first step would be the teacher or the therapist or the parent doing it with them. So you would reflect together, and the teacher highly supports that and says, well, let's talk about this period. Did you raise your hand? Yeah, you did an amazing job. I saw you raising your hand 3 times. Did you stay in your seat? Well, you needed one reminder. You tried to get out. We told you to sit back down. Kind of reviewing it together so that they understand what that even means to reflect on their own behavior. You do that together for a while. And then once they kind of get the hang of that, there isn't really a defined period or a mastery criteria of that. It's more just a sense of they understand it. That sounds really vague. But at some point, you can then each fill out 2 different forms. So the teacher and the student would then fill out 2 different forms, and this teacher would evaluate the student and the student would evaluate themselves, and then you compare. And then maybe you give points for accuracy, right? Is your evaluation of your behavior the same as my evaluation of your behavior? So the points are not necessarily on the behavior, but they're on the student's ability to accurately reflect on their behavior. If they can do that,
I was just gonna say, I think that's the big thing, Shira, is that it's not about yes, you did it, or no, you didn't do it. It's, hey, you didn't lie. You actually told the truth and told me you didn't do it. And look, on my sheet, it also says you didn't do it. So you get a point, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? But you need to really reinforce for not, or for telling the truth before you can actually, give reinforcement for behavior.
Yeah, because if you think about if I'm putting a program in place for myself on I want to exercise every day, and I'm rewarding myself at the end of the month if I exercise, 30 times that month. If I'm lying about it to myself, and I'm giving myself all those points for exercising when in reality I've done it twice that month, like it's really defeats the entire purpose, right? So you're really doing it about that honesty and that ability to reflect is the goal. It's not in your ability to show the behavior, because I'm not reinforcing whether or not the student at that point, whether or not the student was able to raise their hand, but it's were they able to know when they didn't raise their hand.
So this is an example of a behavior contract, pretty simple one, but just listen, did I listen to the teacher, keep my hands to myself, what have you? You could rearrange this for online learning, right? So did I listen to the teacher when the teacher was talking? You don't want to stay off YouTube. Like, did I stay focused on Google Classroom is more what I would say. Because as soon as you say, did I stay focused on YouTube? Oh, YouTube, that's a great idea. Let me search it out, right? So try and stay away from that terminology. And you can try and use something like this and see how it goes. Maybe just some simple point systems. So sometimes you can see when a student is participating or when they're off task. It's really difficult from distance learning to know exactly when they're off task, but you really do know when they are on task, right? Their eyes are like more on the camera. They may be participating or answering a question. So you can even go in with reinforcement as soon as they answer that question. So, hey, I really love the way you're on task right now, or teaching that student what on task means. Wow, I love the way you're on task.
And sometimes, sorry, back to that example, with that example had yes and no. What I'll sometimes do is have like a 0 to 3 or a 1 to 3 or something like that, where it's like all the time, none of the time, some of the time, because back to what Shana was saying earlier, like realistically, we're all off task. Like when we're working on a computer, we all have different tabs open, or at least I do. And the expectation is not 100% perfection all the time, but it's the ability, again, to just reflect and say like, okay, I was on task like some of the time. I could do better tomorrow with, more of the time, or I needed 1 reminder, I needed 2 reminders, or I needed 3 reminders, like kind of make a scale so that it's not all or nothing.
So, Vivian, you also raised a good point. I know we're still on this, but you said the parents blaming the school that the student's not doing work. And that's a tough one because, you want to be in there and you would prefer that the student be at school so that you can, like engage the student a little bit more. Are there any ways to be able to put some interaction in it? It's really difficult, but, making sure that there's, the students answering at least once every 5 times or something like that, or playing some fun music and getting all the students up and dancing at particular intervals. Go Noodle. I don't know if you guys have heard of Go Noodle, but Go Noodle is like a free dance site. It's exercise. They call it daily physical activity. And it's really great. They use that sometimes in schools, just doing some breaks like that, just to get kids like connected again. So you could try a few of those strategies as well.
Active student responding.
Absolutely.